when I was a kid going into my local comic shop at like 7, 8 years old, digging through back issue bins, and like at that point in time, there were like quarter bins and 50-cent bins, which I haven't seen in forever. Now they're like $1 bins, $2 bins, $4 bins. Like that's cheap. Adjusted for inflation, right? But as a kid, I was going into these comic shops and I was a nerd. I was seen as kind of a goofy nerd, goober that was like going into the toy shops trying to look for comic books, or like specifically looking for comic shops, trying to find like cool back issues of, stuff that I could afford as a kid, with a little allowance that could get me to read some Green Lantern. I specifically remember having this like Green Lantern book that I thought was so cool. Another one was like Lobo. I think I had another Wolverine in there. So just like books like that really caught my attention, but were super nerdy. And that was at that time really nerdy, and people saw that as that. Now granted, I can't really mention that on a first date. I don't think that's probably good first date material to be like, yeah, I've got a whole collection full of comic books, tens of thousands of books and statues and posters and all kinds of stuff. And yet, have we as a culture almost normalized comic books and superheroes at this point? I would argue that because of the 2000s to like mid 2000s of the peak Marvel films, like phase 1, 2, 3, peak Marvel, before Disney got a hold of it and before we got this whole kind of convoluted phase 4 stuff, people saw superheroes and saw Marvel and comic books as this new kind of cool thing to do. Like, it's now become a fad. And within the industry, I've seen this a lot where you get people who have never read comic books before, who don't know how to write comic books, don't understand the concept or the theme behind comic books, and why they've been so significant, why they've been so successful. And people will come into the industry and think that they can write for these books, and because for some people, there's a low barrier of entry. And so you walk in and you go, yeah, I'll write a comic book, sure. And as long as you hit the marks, as long as you check all the boxes, you can write a comic book no matter how good or bad it is. And then all of a sudden, you've got a job in comics. Whereas I remember, reading stories of and articles of people like Larry Hama or Mark Silvestri, or anyone of that kind of era. Even like Chuck Dixon talks about this, how, you would have to, your dream would be to write for Marvel or DC. Your dream would be to write for the big two, or to have a character in your grasp, like a Batman or a Spider-Man or something. And that would be like the penultimate level, right, of writing. And you would have to work your way up, though. Like, you would start as maybe getting coffee for some of the artists or some of the writers or editors. Then you would kind of start to see how the editing process works, how the printing process works, how they actually make the books, how it goes from the artist's desks and then to the printer and to the letterer and to the color. Like, there's so many different layers to it. And now it feels like everyone can just, now I'm a comic writer too. And what kind of sparked this thought process was, I've been noticing a lot more individuals who have come into the fold of comic books, and a lot of them are fake geek girls or fake geek guys. And people are going to get triggered by that phrase, and people are going to get upset. But it's true. I mean, these same people, these same fake geek girls, would never have even looked at a comic book before it was cool, or before it was trendy or hip or popular. None of these women would have even thought about coming into the comic book fold. And that's what's interesting, is like, if the popular thing were to be writing novels, they would probably be doing that, but in novel form. If the cool thing were to be making like short films on YouTube, they would be doing that. What it seems like, and what I've found a lot of times, is the new entry level people into comic books that are writing right now don't have the skill level or the thought process or the maturity or the, talent, essentially. Really, it comes down to just talent to write a good, compelling character or story arc or just comic book in general. But because this is the new cool thing to do, and because it's kind of trendy to, be on comics right now as some sort of member of some activist group, because that has become sort of the trendy thing to do, it's popular now. But for me, I'm still seen as a weird nerd, as one of those like old school, like, oh, you like the 90s books, or like you like the Bronze Age stuff, like get out of here, frickin' nerd. But those people are cool because they're like, oh, we're in the cool club now. Like that's another thing too, is that the comic book industry has kind of become almost like a clique, if you will. It's definitely like who is in the popular group, who is in the popular crowd, who is with the times, who's not with the times, who has this type of political messaging in their Twitter bio, who is not, who is interacted with, oh, you've interacted with Ethan Van Sciver, well then you're Comicsgate. There's your Comicsgate now. It's like there's so much clickiness. It feels like a big high school reunion or drama class. And it's so frustrating because, like I said at the beginning of the video, comics are cool now, I guess, only for some people. Comics are cool for those who are writing the way that people want them to write within the big two or within the big publishing companies. But if you don't like the way that they write, then no, comics aren't cool. You're the outcast. You're still a nerd. You're still a geek. You're not cool like one of us. And that's what's so frustrating, is like the comic books in and of themselves have always been welcoming towards the outcasts. The guys playing D&D, the guys and girls playing D&D in the back of the high school cafeteria at lunch, those people that have never really felt like they fit in, those people were reading comics and they felt like they had something to hold on to. They felt like they were connected to those characters when they were reading those comic books. And now those same people are still ostracized if they don't fit in with the current thing or the current, message. And sometimes it's not even the current message. It could just be like, hey, oh, you didn't like this comic book? No, I thought the story was bad. Oh, well, then you're a this. And then they label you. And it's, they label you a racist or a bigot or something, even though you could just say, oh, I don't really like the story. I don't really like the character. I didn't identify with them as well. And that is what's so frustrating to me, is that comics have the industry in general has always been for the outsiders, for the people who never fit in. And so now that the popular kids, all the people that are writing for comics now that think it's cool, that they're like, well, we're the cool ones now because we're writing for LGBTQ stuff, and we're writing for Black Lives Matter, and we're writing for like socialist politics, and we're writing for like all this cool stuff. We're the cool kids now. You can still be ostracized. Because now those fake geek girls, all those fake geek guys who never had any talent or any belief system outside of what the current trend was, now that they're writing for comics, they are still going to ostracize you, which is what comics should never be. And they would argue that, well, comics have ostracized this community. And if you look back, if you actually read comic books in that era, you would know that that isn't true. That people throughout comic books, throughout the industry, have continually tried and successfully implemented people of color, diverse characters, diverse cultures, diverse religions, diverse thought processes, and genders and sexualities and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I thought it was interesting because I still feel like I've never been like I still feel ostracized. I still feel unwelcome because I don't really talk about this whole comics thing with people outside of this YouTube sphere, because it's still a little odd to me that people would so welcomingly be saying, yeah, oh, that's cool. You collect comic books? That's so cool, man. Like, I don't see people doing that. But if you're within the specific crowd, if you're within the specific popular group, if you're saying the right things, when you say, oh, I write for comic books, or oh, I draw for comic books, I read comic books, that's like the cool thing now. And I don't understand how that is now like the cool trend. I hope that slowly starts to fade, because when it's not cool anymore, I think it will welcome itself to people that still feel outsiders and still feel like they're ostracized. They will be welcomed back into the fold with open arms and will be like, hey, these comics are for you, man. Like these comics are for everyone. They've always been meant for everyone. And you don't have to feel like you're ostracized now just because you didn't like a certain book or a certain writer or a certain creator. Like, we welcome you into our community, into our family, But I feel like the current state of things, it's definitely not the same feeling from what I've seen. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think the Disney Marvel phase of films, do you think that really created this like niche group of people who were like, oh yeah, like comic books are so cool now, that like never have read a comic book before? Or do you think that has like kind of bred this new type of writer and creator and artist that is like, I don't know, just not as talented because honestly, they check a box, and if they can write, if they are competent, if they can understand English, then sure, yeah, they have a job at Marvel or DC. I just feel like it's a totally different atmosphere and a totally different vibe within the industry right now, with how many people are just openly and willingly able to just, oh yeah, I write comics now, if you subscribe to the current thing. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is kind of just a ramble of me going off on what I've felt over the past few years as Marvel Phase 4 has kind of created this new type of mentality of like, yeah, I've been reading comics forever. I've always been a comics fan. It's like, really? Like, why is this cool now? I don't know. What do you guys think? Definitely let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.